it is astounding how often we give these detailed insights about who's in your market, is likely to buy the vehicles you have to sell. And dealers do a good job targeting, and their agencies do a good job targeting them with a media strategy, but they don't necessarily design a creative strategy around that to key into those things that are unique to the people that are most likely to buy a car from them. So the ones that are doing a good job of that, the creative converts better.
Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Strategy with Jason. Today, I have two amazing guests with me, and we get to talk about some seriously cool topics. I have Kirsten and Jim with me from Experian. Hey, guys, how's it going? I appreciate you guys taking the time to come jam with me today.
Doing very well. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. We got all kinds of cool topics. We get to talk all things Gen X. Yes, Gen X. Woo. I was thinking about Gen X. Well, I'm thinking that's from 1965 to 1980. That covers a lot. I mean, a lot. I think my parents are almost in that category. Like, it's a lot.
There's
right?
a lot of us that fall in that category, for sure.
A lot of us that fall in that category. But no, look, I love this topic. I get to talk marketing with you guys, and this is just going to be a lot of fun. But hey, before we get into the Gen X topic today, I love kicking off these podcasts with a little origin story. Because A, I'm always fascinated because I'm a true believer that no one just wakes up one day and goes, oh, yeah, automotive, that sounds amazing. And, I have described the automotive industry as the island of misfit toys. And we all come from very unique backgrounds and places. So I'd love to kind of hear your guys'. That's what we'll kick it off today. What is the origin story of how you guys got started in the automotive business? Kirsten, I'll start with you, and then Jim, I'll ask you the same question.
Fantastic. Well, Jason, I started out in automotive a little bit by accident. So I had graduated from college. I was a marketing major, and I joined a marketing research company. And we were doing a lot of marketing research projects for automotive dealerships. And I'm going to date myself now, but we were sending surveys to their customers, giving the dollar incentive, getting the information back, doing the 10-key entry, and then doing a complete analysis of that and providing the information back to the dealership with recommendations. Well, quickly this evolved to, gosh, we could do a lot more if we digitize this. And we evolved into a software company. Customer relationship management, we had a BDC module, we did data mining, we did campaign management, and shortly thereafter, we were purchased by a large DMS provider. So I spent a number of years there, and now I have been with Experian for 8 years. So I've always been in automotive. I've spent a lot of my career in marketing in some way, shape, or form. But originally it was a little bit by accident, marketing research and encouraging people to complete their survey with that dollar incentive.
That's awesome. Hey, this is one of those industries that once it gets under your skin, it's really hard to get it out. Jim, for yourself, how did you get started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry?
Well, I was working at a small interactive development company when the internet came along. So we were designing websites, and I was approached by a company to help launch a web product. And that was 1995, speaking of dating yourself. So launched a product called ADP Auto Connect. And it was one of the first online shopping sites for dealers. It became autotrader.com. So while I intended to tip my toe in to the auto industry, I've been it ever since. So you're right. It does grab a hold of you.
And it's so hard to wash out, right?
For a fact.
I think, so when I sold my dealership, I thought for sure I was going to be out of the business, right? It lasted a whole whopping 2.5 weeks. And it was just like, I feel like it was that scene from the gangster movie. Just when I was out, they sucked me back in, but no, it's fun. It's fun. I love this business. It's provided me and my family such just an amazing lifestyle. And it's just, I just can't imagine it being any other business. The challenges, it's the challenges. I think that's what it is. You have to be slightly a chaos junkie to want to be in the automotive space, because you almost like to put yourself through the flames. And, and marketing is definitely one of those places. We were talking a little bit about this, before we started recording. We're talking about, creative, right, and marketing in general, right? And there's, look, I think, creative without strategy is just kind of art, right? And, but creative with strategy, now that's marketing. Let's get into Gen X, because we're going to go into these topics. First things first, for everyone out there watching, listening right now, what is a Gen X? What is it, right? I mean, just like, how do I visually see it? Kirsten, do you want to do that, or Jim, you want to take it?
Yeah, I can kick things off with Gen X. So you mentioned it earlier, Jason, but Gen X, we are defining it as individuals born between 1965 and 1980. So right now they would be between 42 and 57 years old. Now, I shared my dollar marketing research story already, so I probably have already established, but to reassure the audience, I am absolutely within the Gen X category. But we really wanted to dive into this and understand it from an automotive perspective, because Gen X just isn't talked about altogether that much.
It's all about those millennials.
About boomers aging out. We talk about millennials. We talk about Gen Z up and coming. But what about Gen X?
They're the ones buying cars, right?
They are.
I mean, on a pretty regular basis.
20% of the population, and they are registering the most vehicles.
Well, no, go ahead.
This is a little fun fact for your audience. So, I mean, we're like, yeah, of course they're registering a lot of vehicles. They are the highest generation for registrations. But if we look at year-over-year growth and change, we hear about Gen Z all the time. And I mean, we should talk about that, and we should pay attention to it. Their registration, their year-over-year growth was over 50%. But if we look at the actual numbers, the number of vehicles that they bought and registered, it's still less than 750,000. Mm-hmm. Where Gen X, in that same time frame, they, in 2021, right, they grew 30%. They're registering over 3.3 million vehicles. So it's like, let's not forget about Gen X. Let's not assume we know how to market to them. Let's really focus on that group.
No, I hear you. I mean, I'm thinking of just kind of like from a lifestyle perspective, right? You said it was 47 to, what was it again?
42 to 57.
Okay, 42 to 57. We think of it just from like a career perspective. We're hitting kind of the senior season of our career. I'm not saying that there's not more growth to come out of that, but it's definitely up towards the top portion of that, which unlocks a substantial amount of, let's say, just funds in general, or disposable income. When you think of Gen X, what specifically comes to your mind?
Yeah, so Gen X as a whole, and then we can talk about demographics and psychographics, further segmentation of Gen X, but the group as a whole, couple key things with them. They overall are better educated. They have higher household incomes. They're more likely to be married with kids, but there's a couple key things that are really unique to them. They prefer digital news and email for communication. Mm-hmm. So when you think about your marketing message and how you're delivering that, they're more likely to contribute to charities. Now, whether that charity is arts, religious, political, health charities, just charities as a whole. And they're very environmentally aware. They're taking action to recycle and to be more environmentally responsible as a whole.
Oh, well said. Jim, is there anything you would want to add to, is there anything we miss on the Gen X side? Are they, I'm just trying to think from a lifestyle perspective, for yourself, where do you fit in the Gen X category?
Well, so I'm solidly in the upper end of that age group.
I wasn't going to guess. I was just going to ask. I wasn't going to guess.
But think about the fact that we're a generation that grew up with push button telephones that now have embraced every single technology change that has come along, that we have been in a position to learn and master all those things. So as a generation, we are really willing to learn. We're really willing to adapt, right? And that includes in the auto space in terms of how we go and shop for cars. So that is a unique thing about us. The people after us, my children, they're digital natives. They don't know any better.
Yes.
And my parents, it's a constant re-education process to get them to be able to master the basics. But our group really knows how to use technology, and as a result, very open on the communication side to digital communications.
100%. You know what else I kind of think is that group of, they're nostalgic. They're the ones wearing the "Where's the Beef" t-shirts, and but it's true. And they're the ones that are paying through the nose for the Star Wars action figures. Like they were young then. They have money now, and they're going to spend it on things that remind them of their childhood. And I think how important that is. I mean, pop culture was such a big, look, I told this story to my kids recently that, they saw a payphone. What's that, Dad? Well, let me tell you, this was a way that we communicated with friends at no cost. And I'll tell you how we did that. We would make a collect call that would give us about 5.5 seconds to say our name. And instead we would say, meet me at the mall. And then we would send it through. Someone would ask them if they wanted to accept charges from meet me at the mall. And you would say no. And that's how we communicated with each other at no cost. And they just couldn't wrap their heads around this at all. But there's this sense of nostalgic and pop culture that I think is huge for the Gen X category. And this segues perfectly into our next topic around creative and messaging, mm-hmm. Right? Like in our industry, we bucket everything, right? Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
And if I may, the nostalgia extends also in the auto space, right?
Yes.
So if you look at some of the higher end cars with the biggest engines, they're look like some of those cars we grew up with, right? A Charger, et cetera. And just anecdotally, that's always been the case. So people that collect cars, they tend to collect the cars that were popular when they were young. And you can see, this is not research driven, it's anecdotal, but you can see vehicle valuations for those Model A's, Model T's, the things that our previous generations thought were really cool, they've dipped, right? Mm-hmm. The cars that are bringing all the big money on the auction floor really are the ones that were popular when the people could afford them when they were young.
And you know what? The cool thing is, it's not just sports cars. A neighbor of mine just bought the Jeep Wagoneer. Well, as a kid, he grew up in a Wagoneer. So there was just this nostalgic part of like, now my kids are going to, grow up in a Wagoneer, and like, how awesome is that? So, but let's go, Kirsten, and I'm going to bounce this one over to you. I think too often in our industry, we are so quick to just fit everyone into one box when it comes to creative and messaging. It's like one picture of an F-150 and one single pricing and buy today, or in actually today's case is pre-order. You might get it before 2025. But creative messaging needs to match the audience, and I think we're missing a big boat on the audience, Gen X, that's buying the most amount of cars right now. But I'd love to get your thoughts on how we can match the creative and messaging to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a whole, first of all, back to kind of my marketing research roots, make data-driven decisions. Mm-hmm. So looking at your information, who are your customers? What are they purchasing? But then taking it further and understanding the demographics, the psychographics of those customers, so you can really customize your message to them, as well as how you're delivering that message. So Gen Xers, just as an example, messages of quality really resonate with them. So performance, statistics about the reliability of a vehicle would be something that would resonate with Gen X as a whole. Also, streaming advertisements. They like streaming advertisements, email, and you know what? They still appreciate direct mail as well. So, as far as what to message them and how to message it, it's so critical to understand the individual preferences of your customers.
That's actually really well said. I was just thinking a few years ago, I ran this campaign with the dealership, and you remember those clear phones?
Yes.
You remember those? Like the handheld clear phones?
Like with my Swatch watch?
Yes.
Remember.
Okay. So the dealer principal was like just a huge pop culture guy. Just collect pop culture like crazy. Just anything from from anything from the early '70s on up to the early '80s, right? And somehow he got hold of like an entire lot of these things, and I think he had like 300 of them. So he's like, Jay, I want to give them away with every test drive. And I was like, okay, sure, and it was just like, and the funny thing is all the creative, actually the car was very small. The whole thing was just about this clear phone. Sure enough, I mean, you had people showing up just to take a test drive because you couldn't find these things anywhere. If you find them on eBay, they were going to cost you like $50 or $60. And here he was just kind of giving them away because he bought a whole lot of them somewhere. I don't know where he picked them up, but it resonated. It was completely by accident, right? But what ended up happening was he ended up tapping into a very specific audience within his marketplace and just hit a very funny note, and yeah, some people are even bringing their kids in. It's just like, can I show my kid what one of those look like? Just but yes, I think there's opportunities to do that, and it's not always just about payment. We're so quick to make everything about payment, but I think there's other alternatives. Jim, I'm sure you probably got some thoughts on this as well, right?
Well, so whether it's what you just described is tapping into an insight that's super deep, right? And it sounds like this guy sort of lucked into it. But this idea of why it's important to focus on building a brand, it's really important right now, right? So dealers have people lining up to buy certain cars. And it is a little difficult to get a hold of inventory. There's no question about it, but it's a good time to be a dealer in general. The difference of why you would want to be marketing when the market's so hot, I mean, that's a question that people are asking us. It's partly about brand building, right? Partly about making sure that when things aren't as hot, that people remember you. And now's a great time to do it because not as many people are competing to get that message out in the marketplace. That also extends to service and loyalty, right? So on the loyalty side, everyone knows the best way to get someone in the door is having them as a service customer as well. And that is a revenue stream that everyone's making hay with. Another reason to do marketing right now, it's sourcing inventory. Trying to get those cars to sell is tough, and trying to get the right cars for your market and for your unique customer base even harder. So instead of casting the widest net, it's important to do maybe some spear fishing to find those right people. And then finally, this idea of what are the insights that I have about these customers? It's not just how to connect with them on the marketing side with creative, but also just pragmatically as a business person, who are the best customers? Who's going to give me the most for this vehicle that I'm trying to sell? So the more insight you have about those customers, the more that you can target your marketing, whether it's the creative side. Or whether it's the actual marketing targeting, media targeting side, channel marketing strategies. It's going to pay off dividends, not just today, but down the road.
Look, and I love the fact that you bring up channel strategies, and I want to go down that path. But first, I want to go down this other rabbit hole. By the way, I have a tendency of finding rabbit holes and just kind of going that direction because I love the fact that you brought up, branding. One of the things I've always kind of struggled with in our industry is that we try to be everything to everyone all the time, and that's just look. It sounds like a good idea, right? Like it sounds like something I should do. I should be everything to everyone all the time. But the problem is that really it makes it difficult for the consumer to connect to you from a brand perspective if I don't necessarily just kind of know who the hell are you, and I'm not saying you have to exclude different generations, but I think you really gotta have to own your dealership's identity. And look, if the owner is a Gen X, then I should kind of know that, there's not that there's pros or cons to it, but I want to connect to a business first before I connect to a product. And too often in our marketing efforts, we try to get the customer to connect to the product, not the business. And I think we miss out substantially. Either one of you have any thoughts? I'm sure some of you got some thoughts on that too. Kirsten, I see you shaking your head. So Kirsten, I'll let you take this one.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to field this one. So I think it really comes down to segmentation. And what you said earlier, Jason, about, you can't be all things to all people. And that's true even within a generation. For example, let's say that I'm looking to, market a specific vehicle, right? Like, of course, how I do that is going to be different. And even within Gen X, that's going to be different. But, as you said, if you have a dealer who's a Gen Xer, right? Let's say specifically you are a Honda dealership. Well, a messaging to a Gen X from showcasing an individual person, having someone be kind of the personification of the dealership, as you said, making that connection, that's really important to Gen X CRV buyers. So that's just one example. I mean, anything that you can do to better understand so you can segment that conversation is so helpful, because it's just different messages to different people to meet their specific needs. And I'll give you a really specific example for Gen X. So Gen X as a whole, the vast majority of their purchases are SUVs and pickups. So for Gen X, about 60% of their purchases are SUVs, about 19% are pickups. So you might think, I'm not going to market my minivans to Gen X. I would say, absolutely, let's rethink that plan, because, Gen X only buys about 2% of minivans, or I should say, let me rephrase that. Gen X, for the purchases, 2% of Gen X purchases are for minivans. They have the highest brand loyalty for that segment overall. So
that's interesting.
You're selling minivans. Who are your Gen X buyers? Absolutely target them for that message, because they have the highest brand loyalty for all of minivan purchases.
Look, you're 100% right. I mean, it's like, go to the trucks, for example, right? Just within Gen X alone, there could be 4 or 5 different reasons why a Gen Xer would buy a truck. Maybe because it is for work and it is a work vehicle. Maybe because it is for family. I mean, trucks are now the new family vehicle. Heck, some of them get better fuel efficiency than minivans do, for crying out loud, right? And then there are ones that, really do need a truck because they are weekend warriors and they need that. But it's just in one generation could have 3 or 4 different messages, but we try to bucket it all into anything. And I think this is a perfect segue to our next topic, which is channel strategies. And Jim, you were hinting at that, so I definitely want you to kind of take this one, start this one off for us. Is just the same as creative. We can't take a one size fits all. And I think right now when we're developing our channel strategies, is that we see just, what do you mean? As long as I make it in a square and a vertical, I cover every channel, right?
So channel strategies can be informed by the preferences of the people you're trying to reach. But think about the size of this group. If we're talking about Gen X, we're talking about the biggest single group of car shoppers in the marketplace today. That group can be very different and have different channel preferences. And let's make it a little personal. So think about sitting in your high school class, right? All the people that you went to school with. You all grew up in the same area, and yet you folks are very different. People have different interests, different career paths, different backgrounds. They have a different persona. They have a different way of approaching the world, and that's just in one place that personally. If you take that and abstract it across the entire country, people in that Gen X group are very different. So, looking at that group of folks as one homogenous group it's better than looking at the entire world, but let's take it and segment it down even further. So first off, you have to understand your customers to understand what channels work for them. And the best way to do that is to start with your own customer database. Look at the folks in your database, and then get a statistical review of what their preferences are. And you can do that with data enrichment and analysis from a range of providers. And when you do that, you're going to see that there are patterns, right? There are patterns in terms of what people are interested in terms of their shopping preferences, their service preferences, and what brought them in the door, right? You don't have to rely just on your own data, because we know that every time someone walks in the dealership and they're not always answering that research question of, and what brought you in today? Oh, it was the Facebook ad? Great. we know it's really hard to come by.
I wish they did. It'd make my life so much easier.
No kidding. So the fact is, though, that we have data and others have data that can give you an insight of, this person based on their persona, their demographics. These are channel preferences that they bring to the table. And again, they're not the same just based on generation, right? So if we look at Gen X, you're going to see a range of different preferences, lifestyles, segmentations, and channels specifically. Some folks are super tuned into TV. Some folks are super tuned into email. But not everyone is. That doesn't mean they're not digital, though, because they're using text, they're using social media posts, they're using a whole range of things. But you really have to dig into your own customers to better understand that. And you can do it trial and error, right? I mean, you can explore by trying all the different media channels that are out there. But it's really better to understand who your customers are, what the preferences are when you come to the table. It gives you a leg up, and it's going to save you marketing budget over time, for a fact.
No, I think there's some great points, and I think the key thing too is when you try it. I hate people like, well, yeah, I guess I'll stick my toe in the water over there. Like, no. Get in there, try it. Try the different ad formats. Spend some time. Get a little dirty. Like I find too often we're like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll allocate 1,000. No, like actually put some time into it. I had a dealer come back to me one day and push back on me and say, Facebook's not working for me. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not on Facebook. Neither are my clients. I was like, oh, okay. And you know this because yeah. I was just making sure you didn't do some case study that I didn't know about or something like that. And here's the funny thing. I said, look, back when you used to run radio ads, what did you do to figure out which radio station you needed to be on? Well, I'd have the service department check the presets on every single car that came into service. I said, no shit. So you actually took some time and did a little studying, all right, before you just jumped into 97.3 or 105.6 or something like that. He goes, yeah, of course. So are you doing that now with your social efforts? Yeah, okay, I get it. But that's how the conversation went, right? And I was just like, and I said, like, when you went to 105.7, did you run one ad every other day? Well, no, that would be ridiculous. I ran 3 spots in the morning. I ran 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and then another 5 or 6 on the drive home. I said, yeah. Because it's frequency, right? Oh, yeah, I mean, that's what people were in the car. I wanted to try to reach them as much as I could. And I said, no kidding. When do you think people check social media the most amount? They're like, well, I don't know. In the morning. They wake up. First thing. They roll over. They haven't got out of bed yet. And phone's already on. They're checking their Facebook feed or their Instagram feed. All right, sorry. Anyways.
So to your point, it is difficult to get results if you don't have enough activity to actually measure. Measurement's a whole new topic, right? What are you trying to measure, and how are you doing it? A lot of the different media that are non-digital, we're driving to exposure, unless you have a coupon code or something down there.
Exactly.
But ultimately, you want to be able to know, is the audience you're reaching did they buy a car, or did they do service with me, right? And there are ways to do that and not have to rely on the imprecise method of sort of asking when people walk in the door. So if you can take an audience, these are the people I targeted. We can look at the registrations that occurred from that, and that way, not only do you learn, of course, these are the people I sold that I targeted. You can see how many of those people actually went and bought a car from your competitors, so that you can understand, those people were in market. I reached them with my advertising, but they didn't convert. I wonder why. Was it the creative? Was it the deal? Was it a user? Was it a customer experience? Was it distance, geography, all the variables that you could analyze. But measurement is so key. And taking a more holistic view than, how many clicks did I get today?
100%. And what's funny is it's spending the time, all right, to do the little bit of research. It's funny. I feel like, when dealerships were running newspaper ads or when they were running radio, they would spend more time strategizing. All right. But then for some reason we get to digital and it's just like easy button. Here's my check. You did something right. You did something right. I'm going to put this on. I know. Sometimes I get people give me a hard time because they're like, well, you're being a little mean to dealerships. No, it's just tough love. I'm coming back. I'm putting my dealer principal hat back on. I'm like, no, it's just like, you can't just throw money at a channel and expect something to happen. It's the same thing. You didn't throw money at a radio station and expect something to happen. You took time. You developed out a strategy. So anybody who's watching and listening, guys, that's what we're talking about right now, is developing out a channel strategy. And don't try to do it all at the same time. You didn't go do 7 different radio stations all at the exact same time. You didn't spend 7 different newspapers all at the same time. You took time in each one to really kind of develop the strategy and make sure that you were comfortable with it. And if you didn't see the ROI, then you moved on. And you found another channel that worked out there. But I think that's great. But you mentioned something that I want to go down. And Kirsten, I know you have some thoughts of this. Is when we do talk about channel strategies, it's not only just the channel strategy itself, but also enriching those channel strategies with some first-party data, because, boy, we collect a substantial amount of data points at a dealership, but just how do we use it? So let's do this. Kirsten, if you want to explain to everyone out there watching and listening, what is first-party data, all right, and how we can use it to enrich some of our marketing strategies.
Okay. So simply stated, first-party data is your data. Right. So as the dealership, first party data is the data I'm collecting. So whether I have it because somebody filled out a lead on my website, because they did service with me, because they bought a car with me, any number of reasons why, but I have the data as a dealership because I did business with that customer. It's my data. Okay. Now I have that data, but let's think about Kirsten, right? I can't tell you all the different spelling combinations that I've had of my name over the years. So I'm in service and what's my one spelling? And I gave my Gmail because I really wanted them to contact me right away. But when I filled out the lead form online, I spelled my name correctly, but I gave my spam account because I was just kind of introductory searching for a vehicle, wasn't serious about it yet. Mm-hmm. And then when I bought the car, I had my full information, legal spelling of my name. I gave my cell number. I gave my, maybe my work email because I want to stay up to date on the maintenance and activity for that vehicle. So you have all of these fractured views of Kirsten. How can you combine that information and make sure you have one record for her? And also, what happens with additional information? Maybe she never provided her cell number. How can you append information that you don't have, right? And that's where then we start to get into third-party data, how you can enrich, enhance, and update the current data that you already have to make sure you have a really meaningful conversation with the customer, contacting them at their current contact information. Somebody moved, for example, or just reaching them in channels and methods that you wouldn't necessarily be able to if you didn't have that data on your own.
You know what? And I think sometimes people get a little overwhelmed, right? But I will say this, though. I'm actually excited for this time in our industry because I have found that there are more what I call data conscious dealers out there than I've ever met before. I was just thinking, earlier this year at NADA coming back, I was just like, wow, the amount of questions and just knowledge, of this, what I would very much so say the next generation of dealers out there, were very, very conscious of how they utilize the data in their DMS and the data in their CRM, and how all these systems interact with each other in even some of the conversational data. People were looking for conversational data. I was like, holy cow. Like and then you see new companies come out like Techion, who's going to bring, who's their one of their biggest goals is just to connect all data points from everywhere and put it into one big actionable, ball, or let every, other company out there take action on some of this data. Because that is one thing I think as an industry, we've always really kind of struggled with, is that we've had these data silos. And still, even today, there are some, let's call them legacy companies. All right. You know which ones I'm talking about. They got 3-letter acronyms. Most people use 4-letter words to describe them. But sorry, guys, it's as good as the joke skit. I apologize. No. But there's just been these data silos, and it seems like we've come in now to this, let's call it this new era of just data conscious dealers, and they're hungry. They're hungry for, to understand their data, to understand how they can utilize their data. Jim, what are some of the ways that you've seen dealers out there utilize their data in some very unique ways?
Well, so that enhancement of the data we just talked about, to harmonize it, get it clean, and bring it all together. Step one. Step two is enriching that data with insights. So you now know that Kirsten lives at this address. She has these multiple email addresses, et cetera. But what enrichment allows you to do with third-party data, third-party insights about your own customers, would be to say, hey, does she likely live in a household with other people? What sort of property does she likely live in? What categories? And these are statistical categories, right? So I'm not giving you information about her specifically, but statistically, based on where she, what we know about her, what's her estimated household income? When did she purchase a vehicle last? Most likely, what's the makeup of that family in terms of not just who lives at a house, is there a family, other kids, but more importantly, what makes that family unique? So when we look at Gen X folks, we break them into, we look at the entire U.S. population, and we break it into different segments. And Gen X, in this case for car shopping, skews highly in a category we call sport utility families. Surprise, surprise. So these are families who are likely to they're upscale, they're middle-aged couples with school-aged children, they're having an active lifestyle, and this particular segment tends to live in the outlying suburbs. They are more highly educated, they're comfortable spending money, they're engaged in athletic activities. I mean, these are an active family, right? And they're super involved with activities that involve the whole family. They need vehicles that can accommodate that. So no surprise that they're getting these big sport utility vehicles. No surprise that they're getting things where they can haul folks around. So reaching out to them in a way that resonates more closely with what's going to likely motivate them to come to your dealership and purchase a vehicle from you means now that you have this understanding of this segment, you need to target them with creative that speaks to that. So on a unique basis of what dealers are doing, and it shouldn't be unique, but it is, they're putting creative out in the marketplace that talks to the needs of this specific segment. Jason, it is astounding how often we give these detailed insights about who's in your market, is likely to buy the vehicles you have to sell, and dealers do a good job targeting, and their agencies do a good job targeting them with a media strategy, but they don't necessarily design a creative strategy around that to key into those things that are unique to the people that are most likely to buy a car from them. So the ones that are doing a good job of that, the creative converts better.
That is incredibly well said, Jim. I mean, look, you define the audience and then work backwards towards the creative. And too often, in our industry, we like shiny things. We do. It's okay. We do like shiny things. And we have a tendency of kind of really fixating ourselves on the creative. when, which I think what you explained is probably one of the best strategies that anybody out there watching and listening now could be executing right now, is spend more time defining out the audience that you want to target, then work backwards towards the creative and the messaging that's going to speak to that audience. You're not going to have ad dollar waste. All right. And you're going to see a substantial increase in the ROI of your marketing efforts. Very well said. Great. That's Jim. Hey, look, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our conversation, but before I let you guys go, for everybody out there that's watching and listening right now, what would be maybe kind of a final thought you'd like to leave with people that are currently listening or watching? Kirsten, I'll start with you, and then Jim, I'll finish off with you.
Yeah, Jason, I think you summarized it beautifully. And I would just reiterate making data-driven decisions. So following the data, that will identify your best customers as well as how to best reach them. Mm-hmm. And as far as how to reach us, well, I am on LinkedIn, fairly active, and I would encourage anyone to follow Experian Automotive, as we'll be sharing a number of things, insights such as these for different generations, different vehicle segments, finance insights, all sorts of things. So definitely, if you're not already, follow us on Experian Automotive. And by all means, if you have questions about anything we chatted, you're welcome to send me a message on LinkedIn or email me directly. It's Kirsten, Kirsten Von Busch, VONBUSCH @Experian.com.
Awesome. Kirsten, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And you guys are going to be at what next up and coming show? Jim?
So we're going to be at the Modern Retail Conference. In fact, Kirsten's going to be speaking there. And everyone can come out and hear what she has to say about the exciting topic of...
Dun, dun, dun.
At Modern Retailing, we will be talking about insights and audiences, really digging into those data-driven decisions as a whole for dealers and how they can leverage data for their marketing campaigns.
Awesome. Hey, Jim, for anybody out there that'd like to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Oh, sure. Again, you can reach me on LinkedIn or james.maguire, Maguire, at Experian.com. And, in closing, I would say that, data-driven strategies make all the sense in the world. Don't forget, use that data to help measure at the other end. And it's not just measuring results, but measuring all the people that you're working with, your entire ecosystem of marketing vendors. Because if you're all on the same page about what data is driving results, then you're all going to be generating better returns for effect.
Awesome. Hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a lot of fun. You know what? This is actually the last podcast I will be doing in this studio, so it's kind of bittersweet because I've recorded so many out of this area. So guys, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today. This has been a lot of fun. You have yourself an amazing day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy with Jason podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.